Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where you can see I'm once again joined by Team News and Ticks over in Germany at the Euros for our weekly catch-up. How you getting on, mate? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. Few quiet days without football, which has been unthinkable for the last couple of weeks. But 2-3 day rest period. It's actually been quite welcome.
Yeah, I don't know who that's more welcome for, the players or the fans over there. It must, sort of when you go over there for the entire tournament, you must be absolutely knackered by this point in the sort of halfway stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's in Qatar. We went to loads of games because Doha's so small. We was going to 2-3 games a day, and it actually somehow felt easier than this, where you're sort of like, do you go to a bar? Do you just watch it in the hotel, obviously, and then you're traveling to the England games, and obviously it's a much bigger country, so there's much more travel involved. But yeah, when I actually done more in Qatar, but it was less tiring somehow.
Cool. Well, we're going to talk about the Euros during today's show because we've got a question on Bukayo Saka as one of the questions. What have you made, though obviously you're at the game on, I can't even remember what day it was now. Was it Tuesday? I can't even remember. I think it was Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, obviously the reaction back here hasn't been great. We saw the fans at the end, or some of the fans at the end, sort of making their feelings pretty clear. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the performance was rubbish, and no one needs me to tell them that. Everyone saw it. We were so good, and I'm not even saying this because I was part of it, but the England fans were so good, and I think a lot of the players have come out and said that, like during the game. Like, I was sitting there thinking it is hard to back these lot playing, but that wasn't sort of really the sentiment from the fans. We really good, really loud, and just got given nothing back, and it was a low energy performance. It was a low intelligence performance, and I'm not condoning people throwing stuff at Southgate as much as I really dislike him, but I'm also kind of not really surprised. I think it's one that obviously they don't let you drink in the stands in England for pretty much precisely that reason. And yeah, I don't like to see it, but I'm also not surprised.
Yeah, it weren't a great performance. I think it did slightly improve when he made the changes in the second half. And we'll talk about Bukayo Saka in a minute because there's lots of talk at the moment about him shifting over to left back. Ian Wright spoke about it. I think Gary Neville mentioned it as well. And there's been lots of talk in the papers about it potentially happening. But from what you saw in that sort of when the changes happened midway through the second half, are you expecting to go on Sunday, isn't it? Are you expecting to go there on Sunday and see a few more changes and maybe what he made for the last game?
I'm not sure because he just seems to be scared of dropping big names. Like Foden on the left doesn't work, will never work. Bellingham doesn't really know what he's meant to be doing, and he's just all over the place. He's escaped a lot of criticism, Bellingham, because the first 20 minutes of the first game he looked like the best player in the world, and he's basically been awful since. And it's not from a place of hey, I think he's unbelievable, but he just looks lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where Southgate's going to have a problem because I've said it before the tournament, but I would start Gordon on the left because you've got someone who is going to beat someone on the outside. The problem with Foden is he gets the ball and comes inside every time, and it makes it really easy to defend with it, especially without an overlap, because obviously Trippier doesn't want to use his left foot either. So for me, it's difficult because I think Mainu done quite well when he came on, but I would drop Jude deeper. And I know people say, but he's a 10, he's had a great season at Real Madrid, etc., etc. And it's all correct, but he's not doing it for England at the moment. So personally, I would go Rice with Bellingham, with Foden at 10, Gordon left. And obviously, I'm going to say Saka, but on the right wing. But Palmer did look half okay. He wasn't as good as everyone went on about. But when everyone else was so flat and he came on and he looked quite bright, he done well when he came on. So I expect Saka to start, but it wouldn't surprise me if he changes him for Palmer. I think it'd be the wrong decision because you've got even less runners off Harry Kane, especially if he doesn't bring Gordon in. You're slowing your team down, if anything. But it's Southgate.
Yeah, it is Southgate. It wouldn't surprise me if Palmer starts, but like you said, it's Southgate. He doesn't like dropping big names, especially more than one in a game. Right, just to start off, everyone, as usual, we are recording this on Friday. It is just gone 3:00 on Friday. It's going out on Saturday morning, though. So if anything's happened between then or now and then, that's why we're not talking about it, because we pre-recorded the show ahead of Saturday. Also, team news and tics is over in Germany at the moment, and his hotel Wi-Fi is not great, so he's just using his phone, and hopefully it holds up. But if there is any sort of interference while you're watching or listening to this, that is why. Right, we were talking about Saka then, so let's bring up this slide. We've got a question here from Igbo, I think it is, says, what's your take on Saka playing left back according to our legend Ian Wright? Now, I've been speaking about this the last couple of days. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I don't like the idea of him playing left back. When I say that, that's not because I don't think he can do it and he can do it well. I just think if you're moving your right winger to play at left back, there's something seriously wrong. And I'm sure he could do it. I wouldn't mind him going out on the left if you're going to bring Palmer in on the right. I know you spoke about bringing Anthony Gordon in the left, but you could easily play Saka out on the left. I know he likes to play on the right. We've become used to him playing on the right for Arsenal in attack, but I think he could easily switch over to that left-hand side and give you some natural width when he can go on the outside then. But although I wouldn't be against Gordon starting either, I just don't like the idea of him going back to left back. It just feels really odd to me that's even been suggested by a lot of names.
Yeah, for me, it's a horrible idea, and I'm quite similar to you. I wouldn't mind him on the left, and it would suit Harry Kane because Saka will go down the outside and get crosses in, and Kane's quite good aerially. What would worry me about that is Foden would either go 10 or on the right, or Palmer on the right, and they're not really back post attackers. They both hang about in 10 spaces. Mm-hmm. So although you'd have Saka being able to get to the byline and put crosses in, unless Jude's up supporting Kane, he's still only really aiming at one man versus what we could presume is going to be at least 5 defenders. Not obviously, I say defenders as in where they are on the pitch, not what position they actually play. The left back thing, I think, is a horrible idea for so many reasons. You could possibly get away with it in the next game, but you think beyond that, like say, I think Switzerland will go through against Italy, but if it is to be Italy, they play a back 5. So now Saka's going to have to do some defending, and the lines are all different. He's going to have a relationship with, we presume, Kyle Walker to be able to keep things onside, whilst also dealing with a wing back and someone inside him. And it's just like, if the arguments do it for one game, what's the point? If the difference between you going through or not against like whoever, like Slovakia, Slovenia, them type of games, is Saka playing at left back, then we're doing something horribly wrong as a country. To be honest, if Shaw is anywhere near fit, this is the game to get in minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think he definitely gets minutes. Surely he'll get half an hour, you would expect. Otherwise, what was the point in taking him seriously? And now he's declared himself fit, you have to give him minutes straight away, because what's the point otherwise? So I think he definitely gets some sort of minutes. I can't imagine he'll start, but I think he'll come on with 20 minutes, half an hour to go, no matter what the sort of match situation is. I think he's got to come on and get some sort of minutes into his legs.
See, I never like changes like that for defenders, because the game state can be all important. Mm-hmm. But it is something, as I said, they're going to have to get a minute somewhere. I never like when defenders, especially, are earmarked for we're going to give him 20 minutes no matter what. But because you never know, if we're like ridiculously dangerous from Trippier set pieces, but it's it's still 0-0. The game's on a knife edge, but all of our we've been as crap as we have, but we're creating from set pieces, and then you've kind of got to drag Trippier off, or you've got to make a crazy move that somehow you'll still want Walker on for counter attack, so you've got to find a space for all of them. I really don't like them type of changes for defenders, but it is what it is. And as I said, he'll have to get minutes, otherwise, as you said, there was 0 point in bringing him.
What have you made of Saka overall? He was very bright, I thought, in the first game. He has struggled afterwards, but obviously England aren't exactly playing to his strengths. I bet time and time again he's wished he'd had Ben White behind him throughout this tournament.
And someone inside him, where like, obviously with us, we tend to have Odegaard just inside him. And I actually said to my friend when we was at the game the other day, people moan that they get in each other's way. And I can guarantee Saka's standing on the right wing now thinking, can someone get closer, please? Because where we play, obviously more of a 4-3-3 or a 6 and 2 8s. England is obviously more of a 4-2-3-1. Bellingham hasn't got near the right side of the pitch at all, really. So Walker tends to give Saka the ball in straight lines and in general doesn't overlap. And then there's no midfielder inside him for him to bounce off. So unless he can manage to roll and turn, which he has done a couple of times, but then he's rolling into traffic, there's just no options for him. Like, and it's not just him. I would say the same. I think Foden's had a really poor tournament, but I think it's the same for him on the other side. There's just no options for any of these guys to play off. The system is horrible. It's not even horrible. It's non-existent. Like
it's so mad though, isn't it, that he's not been changing it, because it's so obvious for all of us watching it, whether at home, over there. You know, everyone can see that the system's not working and that ultimately England are going to go out because of it. And yet that it doesn't seem like there's any real prospect of him changing it, even for this game. It still looks like, there might be one or two personnel changes, but the system's just going to carry on being the same. It's so mad. I just don't get it. Honestly, it baffles me.
No, it makes no sense to me. But as I said, even if you're going to go with this 4-2-3, I think it's where Mainu actually made quite a big difference, is that he got up the pitch more than Trent and Gallagher both did. So he did give the winger some support. And there was the chance, I think it was the Palmer shot, where Mainu ended up in the sort of like a 10 position. And so Gordon found in between the lines. He flicked it around the corners to Kane. Kane probably should have given it back to him, but gave it to Palmer, whatever. It wasn't a horrible choice. It probably wasn't the right one. But it gave these players someone to bounce off, rather than at the moment it seems like anyone that gets the ball, it's kind of like they're given it and gone, go on then, you do something. And it's the same for Bellingham, Kane, Foden and Saka. All of them, they're not playing like individuals, but they're being put as if they are individuals. It is like Roy the Rover stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, you got one?
Yeah, mine is naturally going to be transfers. Pretty much most of my questions are around transfers. So Fabo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, said, at what point of a transfer does Arteta or any other manager have conversations with the players? Is it common for conversations to happen between players and managers and transfers not to happen? Just my part on this, it's a case-by-case basis. They will always talk, obviously, before completion to see where they fit, especially if it's a player that's highly sought after. Say Rice is the perfect example. You want to sell him absolutely every way you can as early as possible and convince him that you're the only place you want to go. So Arteta spoke to Rice really early. He spoke to Timber and before the deal happened, but it wouldn't have been as early and we didn't really face as much competition for him. But it doesn't happen so much anymore, but quite famously, when we got Aaron Ramsey, Ferguson basically hadn't spoke to him before they had their offer accepted, and obviously we had one, but Wenger had flown him out and met him, whereas Man United sent, was it Gary Neville to meet him? So it was like, that doesn't happen so much anymore. I think that transfer actually taught the world of football a lot about player relations. But yeah, in general, it happens. It always happens. And do transfer managers speak to players and transfers not happen? All the time. Like, you're not everyone's cup of tea. Sometimes, like, for example, using Arsenal, might have a vision for a player that the player just doesn't feel that suits them or doesn't fit them. So yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, that happens an awful lot. And sometimes manager will speak to a player and just not like what sort of comes across from it. And they always talk about personality and characters being so important in these transfers. Managers say they're just important as quality at times, and if they don't get the right vibe from a player, then they'll pull the plug on it, and that happens an awful lot. Obviously, there are the constraints of the legalities when it comes to transfers. Managers aren't supposed to talk to players until they've been given permission from the other clubs, but let's face it, it happens, and it happens quite a lot. Most people try and sort of tread the line of decency, but it does happen quite a bit. You mentioned the Rice one there. Rice has spoken about it loads of times. It was a different sort of transfer, that one. It was a bit of a gentleman's agreement. West Ham knew he was going to go, and so he was talking to clubs and managers, and Arteta absolutely sold him Arsenal really, really well, and Rice has spoken about it a lot. So yeah, it does go on a sort of transfer by transfer basis, and some are different than the others. But yeah, it happens a lot. Managers will speak a lot, and if there is a battle and there are lots of clubs and a player knows he's going to be moving and the club knows he's going to be moving, then it will happen way before sort of completion or anything like that. It will be the manager, like you say, will be trying to sell the club as best as possible, and the manager is the club, isn't it? So you want him speaking as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think with Rice, we'd actually inquired to West Ham the summer before, and they said no chance essentially. But Arsenal would have spoke to his agent to see if it was possible. His agent's his dad, and then from then on, there was sort of not intense dialogue, but there was always open dialogue from then, and it intensified in and around January. Um, and going back on your other point, where like you said, players' vibes might not fit. There's two players this season. Well, we spoke to them in the early part of this year that the club just didn't like, be it Arteta or other people at the club didn't like them. So then moves never materialise. So yeah, that also happens all the time. That's probably more common than people think because you'll just end up never hearing us or anyone else linked with that player. So say, I don't know, I don't want to use it. They spoke to a player from whatever Wolves. They haven't. I'm just making up a scenario, and they didn't like them. You just never hear of it again, so people don't even know that those things have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Right, we've got here on Eze, who I know you've spoken about on your Patreon in the last week or so. Jay Russell says, you mentioned we have some interest in Eze. Have we been in contact with his reps? There's reports of interest from Spurs, City, Liverpool. Do you know if there's any truth in that? And is there any indication that we would potentially be the player's preference given his time with us in the youth team? Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you very much. Same to you. Well, you've been speaking about Eze on your Patreon and in the last week or so. For anyone who's not caught up with what you had to say, do you want to just fill them in quickly?
Yeah, I just said that I'd heard from two people that were not connected. I said unconnected, which made people think I was listening to people that had no idea, but I meant they're not connected to each other. Both told me that we're looking at Eze and he's a possible option for us. I've had a few sort of mini updates from them. In terms of this question, I don't know about the player's preference. There was a report yesterday saying Tottenham are favourites, and they're looking. And I actually said it when I released it that I believe Tottenham to be favourites, but it was something Arsenal were looking at. But there was a report yesterday saying that Tottenham are favourites and they'd look to get it sealed after the Euros. That wasn't true, and it was an aggregator that said it, and they said Gary Jacobs said it, and I read it and I thought, I know that's not true. And I didn't realise Gary Jacob was following me, so I messaged him, and he'd already put out a thing to the aggregator saying I didn't say this. Can you like take my name off it because I just haven't said this? And I said, oh, I'm glad you've said that because it's not true. And he went, yeah, I know it's nowhere near true. So Tottenham, they don't want to pay the fee up front essentially, and Daniel Levy's being Daniel Levy and he's trying to drive the price down. But the issue they've got is there's other suitors. You know, if you're the only one going for a player, or if the team want to lose the player, if they wanted to lose Eze, then you know you can work on the price and potentially get it down or get a deal to suit you. But that's not the case with Eze. I would probably say Tottenham are the most advanced. As I said, I don't know about things with the players' camp, but they are the most advanced in terms of talking to Palace. But at the moment, Palace absolutely aren't budging. They're saying release clause or nothing with the terms that we've set out, the terms of the release clause, and Tottenham are trying to play around with that. That's not to say they might not hear if someone else is interested and say, oh, sod it, let's do it. But as of now, it's been a standoff with them two. And the only thing I will just caveat that before people say is when I say release clause or nothing, there is a case where maybe in time, for example, if it is us, and I'm just making this scenario up, but they might accept a different deal with players involved. So when I say release clause or nothing, that's what they're saying at the moment. But if we were to, you know, if they wanted Reece already, I'm sure that a deal could be worked. But yeah, as of now, they're saying release clause or nothing. And Tottenham well, not even Tottenham. Daniel Levy is being Daniel Levy.
Mm-hmm. I hope he doesn't go to Tottenham. I really hope he doesn't go to Tottenham.
I can't. I think I've said this to you before. I can't see it. I think it's a horrible fit. I'm not overly convinced on his fit with us, to be honest. But the Tottenham fit, I can't see it at all. Like, where do him and Maddison coexist? Yeah. How do they coexist? And even if they do, then you don't go. It looks like Tottenham are going to sign a striker. I think their favourites to sign Tony. So you can't go Tony, Son, Brennan Johnson, or Kulusevski, Maddison, Eze, and then leave a Bissouma or a Sarr or a Højbjerg and say, oh, you've got to cover for all of them. And then you've got Porro, who can't defend but is a good footballer. Udogie, again, I'm not convinced on defensively. Again, a very nice footballer. And they already rely too much on Van der Ven just covering absolutely everything because of his pace. And that would get even worse if they've got no midfield.
Yeah. Yeah, when you talk about not being a fit for us, if I think it would be a work in progress if he signed for us. I don't think he immediately slots into one of those positions and it's a really perfect fit. But I think he's a good enough footballer and Arteta's a good enough coach that it's something that could end up working. I do like the idea of it happening. I can't imagine. I know Levy is Levy, but you're going to struggle to drive the price down or anything like that when it comes to Eze this summer. Surely, when there's other interest, and they've just lost Michael Elise as well, they're not going to want to absolutely hand Eze over to someone. I think they'd really struggle with that. But yeah, I really do like the idea of it. I think he's an exciting player. I know Arsenal want to sort of sign a player who can open teams up from nothing. I think he's got the ability to do that. From all accounts, he's very well liked behind the scenes as well. He's got a very good character and personality and drive to be, to improve, which I think ticks a lot of boxes with Arteta. So it's absolutely one I can envisage happening in terms of the player. What's he like off the pitch? There's a lot that ticks the boxes from where Arsenal's concerned. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this one as it sort of rumbles on during the summer. I just hope he doesn't go to Spurs. It was like Elise when I was just desperate for Elise not to go to Chelsea. I was so happy when he ended up going to Bayern, choosing Bayern, and it'd be similar with Eze and Spurs, I think.
Yeah, just to add on that, they do love him. Like everyone at the club loves Eze, so they do see him as a fit. When I say I don't see him as a fit, I think he's a wonderful footballer, but I don't really see him as a left eight. He's not a left winger in the system we want to play. I just worry about him off the ball. And I know the argument to that is there's probably 30 games a season where that wouldn't matter so much when we're playing low blocks. I'm just never a fan of players that, you could have 7 good games in a row, for example, unbelievable games, and then you play sort of Man City away and you've got to drop him because that's not the game that fits him. It is what it is, and the footballer, we use squads more in football now than we ever have done, so it does make sense. It's just, I guess it's more of a me thing, but there's no doubt about him as a player or his ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's about 60 million, isn't it? Most of it up front.
Yeah, I think it's 60 plus 8. I'm not sure what the plus 8 is, but I think it's 90% has to be up front, so roughly 55 million. I think it's over 50 million up front, and then I think it's 60 plus 8. But again, I don't know this, I'm sort of speculating, but they've been linked with quite a few of our players. I know they like Emil. They've been linked with Reece. They've been linked with Eddie. So I wonder if we could do a deal where even if the price is the price, but the upfront isn't the upfront.
Yeah, I think
they would obviously be separate deals before anyone goes, swap deals don't happen, because they don't. They would be separate deals, but obviously they'd be negotiated in the same room at the same time.
Yeah. It wouldn't, I don't know if this is going to happen or not when it comes to Eze, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does, that there is some sort of trade involved in it. Like you said, the interest is there in a couple of players for Arsenal. I still feel Emil at this stage, I'm still leaning more towards Fulham if he's going to go anywhere than Palace, but there's definitely interest there from Palace, and we know there's long-term interest in Eddie from there. And it wouldn't surprise me if one of those ends up going the other way, should Arsenal sort of step up their interest in Eze. But it wouldn't surprise me if they go there, even if Eze doesn't come to Arsenal, to be honest. I think maybe one of those players is going to end up in South London.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually interesting on that, because someone told me about Fulham, and I said, like, for Smith Rowe, sorry, and I said, I'll double check it. And the person I double checked it with said, yeah, them and Palace. So I put it out there, and then Simon Collins messaged me and said, I know Palace are really in for him. So it's weird. So I had separate on the Fulham and Palace, and then someone that had combined the two. Yeah. And obviously you think more so Fulham, which obviously I think you'd already said that before I put my Patreon piece out. So yeah, it's weird how different people think different teams are more in for him.
I think we're going to probably hear more about Emil in the next couple of weeks. Things are really going to sort of step up in terms of maybe a green light being given to try and get a deal done. I think we're getting to that stage now where it's going to kick off a little bit with him. We're obviously over in Marbella at the moment with the squad. What do you make of that little sort of camp pre-season that they're having over there? And 6 of them at the moment. There's going to be Martin, Thomas, Gabby, Jesus as well, sort of linking up, although Martin's already there as well. So Yeah, it's not. It's just not. It's obviously players normally go out and do it by themselves before pre-season, don't they? You see them go out there with a couple of mates like Eddie and Reese or someone like that, or do it together with a coach, a random coach in Spain or something like that. You don't often get the clubs going over and doing it together.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've done it last year in mainland Spain. I can't remember exactly where it was, and I got there was a story happening, and I said, "Oh, like a couple of players are in Spain." Got hammered for it because they're like, "Oh, pre-season doesn't start for them," and it's like, as you said, it is usually more an individual thing. I remember Hector used to quite regularly take his coaches everywhere with him. I think even on that Arsenal documentary, he always had a coach with him or a physio with him. But it's interesting they're doing it as more as groups, and it's funny. We spoke a few weeks ago about the relationship between Ben and Timber, how that's going to be so pivotal for our season and the way they play. And it's interesting that, well, it's not interesting. It's obvious that they're both out there, and we've got maximum time to work on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. It's just, it's just not something I've seen before, and especially, I think Mikel's over there. Obviously, the coaching staff are over there. I say a lot of the teams, the family have gone over there, so they've basically got a little period each day where it's just right. We're training, but other than that, it is basically holiday. They've got no guidelines. They're not being told when to get back or anything like that. It's just right. You've got 2 hours of training every single day, and the rest of it's a holiday. That's how it's being treated. So it's not like an official pre-season thing, but it's just not something I've seen before. I thought it was interesting when I heard it.
Yeah, well, I don't think I might be wrong, but I don't think Arteta ever actually came back from Spain. As in, I know them so I think he went on these holidays and then has gone straight to there. As far as I know, he might have come back briefly, but I don't think he did.
No, I'm not sure he did.
Yeah, because I remember I was talking to someone and they said he's still away, and I thought that's a long holiday for him. And then when I found out about this Marbella thing, I thought that kind of makes sense. If you knew 3 days later he was going to be in Marbella with the players anyway, then
Eddie's going out there. Eddie's going out there for it as well. So everyone's going to be over there.
Yeah, they're real big on the family feel, aren't they, and the closeness of the camp. But I don't know if you remember last season, a bit different, but Burnley, because their season finished early because of the Championship, they done a pre-season before and then went on their summer holidays and then done another pre-season. So this is a bit different because it leads straight in. But yeah, Burnley, they done like, I can't remember how long it was, but they done like quite an intense camp. Then they basically split their summer because in the players' contract this you have 4 weeks off. Most clubs give a little bit longer, but they split it. So obviously Burnley won the league, and then they had a couple of weeks off, and they came back. And then I think the idea was so they wasn't starting from zero when they came back. But players aren't like that anymore. I mean, back in 10, 20 years ago, players would come back fat and just been drinking all summer. But now they pretty much keep themselves in shape year round.
Yeah, no, it's pretty different to 20 years ago, definitely in that regard. Right, you got one?
Yeah. So again, Fabo, in a deal like Pepe's, will the club go to extreme lengths to keep it quiet? Like when Ornstein came out to reject claims we'd bid for him, do you think that would have been a club brief, as in they've kind of told him to say that to try and keep the scent off the fact that we were going for him? I can't think of any of examples since Pepe where this sort of thing's happened.
Yeah, well, I got stung by that as well because I spoke to someone at the club as well who said, no, it's absolutely not true. And I put it out. It's one of those tweets that pops up on my timeline every now and again. People are determined to prove that I always get things wrong. They'll put that out. But that was just what I got told. And I think what the difference was when myself and David both put those tweets out on the same day, we'd obviously spoken to the same person who'd give us the same steer on it. But that was a lot earlier on in the summer. The sort of news that he was actually going to sign or Arsenal had made a move for him came out a month later. So I like to think that the people that we went to at that time and asked to try and get the reports confirmed that were coming out of France at the time, I'd like to think that they were telling us the truth at the time and that nothing had happened. There hadn't been a bid or anything like that. But obviously that changed a month later and a bid did go in. I've forgotten the actual theme of the question there. I just suddenly remembered about Pepe, what you were talking about.
Will they go to extreme lengths to keep it? I think basically they've not said this, but I'm reading between the lines. Basically, they're trying to ask, is it possible that something's going on now, but everything's being suppressed?
I don't know if it's been suppressed. And would they go to extremes to keep something out? Possibly. I mean, it's a business at the end of the day. If they think it's going to help them get a transfer, then why not? They have no right to be public and open about negotiations and transfer negotiations, do they? I mean, in what world do multi-billion or multi-million pound negotiations often get put out in the open for everyone to read about and speculate about before it actually happens. It's not very often. So there's no right for journalists to find out what's going on and the public to find out what's going on until it's signed. Obviously, we all want to know. But if the club think that it sort of leaking out in the open is going to really harm the chance of getting it, then I'm sure they will do all they can to keep it under wraps. I don't. If a journalist gets hold of some information though, and will go to to try and confirm it before putting the story out, if they've got real legit info that they can prove is right, I can't imagine it. I don't think it's ever really happened to me where someone at the club who you're going to check it with will out and out lie and say no, that's not right, just to try and stop you putting it out. I think if you've
will they ever say, like, you've got something from somewhere and you go to them to confirm it? Will they ever say, like, yeah, it's true, but we really need this to not come out, essentially?
Probably. I don't think that's ever happened. That ever happened to me? There is times when you would probably think. I think when I was, in my previous job when I was covering Reading, where it was slightly different from Arsenal and not as big as Arsenal, and stuff in Arsenal always filters out somewhere. So you're very reluctant if you're a journalist covering Arsenal and you've got what you think is a big story. If they say we really don't want it to come out, you're very reluctant to agree to that because it will come out somewhere else. If you've heard about it, it won't be long before someone else has heard about it because there's so many journalists on that beat fighting for stories and stuff like that. So it'd be very rare that you'd be like, oh, I'll go on then, because you just know what's happened. You'll say go on then, and 5 hours later, someone else is tweeting out the story. I think when I was doing it at Reading, when I was covering Reading, and it was only a couple of us sort of on the beat there, and I was, the main local paper, there was a couple of occasions there where it'd be like, all right then, I had a big injury story or something like that before a game, and I was talking to the club about it, and I was like, okay, I won't report it because, it's going to really benefit the other team that you're playing and that sort of thing. But for Arsenal, I just think it's so big and the machine is so vast that you know what will happen. Someone else will put it out straight away if you'd agree to that. So I can't remember any instance that's happened to me covering Arsenal.
I've had it with team news, not with transfers. I remember the biggest one was Saka for City at home, and obviously they let him pretend to be in the England squad. They took him to the hotel the night before, and I knew quite early on basically he hadn't trained, so I didn't know he wasn't in the team. But if you've not trained all week, chances are. And they kept that, and they were like, even when I was told, it was like, this absolutely cannot get out, because a few weeks before, Partey got injured. I think it was before the Man United game. And they were furious that got out. They were really, really upset. It didn't come out through me. It came out through another Twitter account. And then a few people confirmed it. And before you know it, everyone knew. But with with the Saka one, with Man City, they were like, it cannot come out. And it didn't.
Yeah. I think any other story I'd always be reluctant to go to Arsenal to confirm an injury story, I think, because if you did that, then you do get put in a position there of maybe someone saying to you, look, this is just, what's the point in putting this story out? And sometimes you do have to judge whether it is worth putting a story out for injuries. It's always a real sort of fine line. I remember I did it before that Brentford game in COVID. I put out that Aubameyang was out on the morning of that game, and I was really, it was a really big story that he was going to miss the opening game of the season. But you just knew how annoyed people at the club are going to be that has leaked out. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a fine line, but obviously I still put the story out. But I didn't actually go to Arsenal to confirm that. I knew, I was completely, full of confidence in where I got the story from that he was out. I didn't even bother going to Arsenal on that because I knew they would have got annoyed about it.
Yeah, so it always annoys me with injuries, because I tend to not put them out because, as I said, I know how annoyed they get with teammates. So it's like with Odegaard, when he missed Newcastle, obviously with concussion, so then he's out for 2 weeks. And I think we only had one more game before the international break. I can't remember who it was. We beat someone at home. Mm-hmm. But it was like people going, why he's out, and Arteta never answered in the after the game, because obviously so much happened during the game as well. It kind of got lost. But I was like, I don't really want to put it out, because then if I put it out on the Tuesday and we're not playing until the Saturday, that tells everyone. If I say it's concussion, as you said, with the protocol, he's out.
Yeah.
And someone else does it, and you almost think like, you feel like you're sort of trying to do the right thing, and then someone else does it anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, it's the thing with injury stories. It's yeah, I don't know. They're just weird stories to sort of judge whether it is. Well, obviously it's news, but if you're, I suppose like us as well, we're fans of the club that we're reporting on as well. So you don't want to give the opposition any sort of extra chance of beating Arsenal, do you? And when we're releasing that sort of information, that is giving opposition a bit of an extra helping hand anyway when it comes to setting things up. So it always goes through my head when it's like, is that really worth reporting or not? But I think it kind of depends on the sides of the story, really.
Yeah, well, I stopped reporting the hotel for that reason, because it gave teams 24 hours notice of basically if someone wasn't playing. But now, because everyone found out about the hotel, I'd imagine rival clubs probably send scouts there anyway. But if not, there's so many people that probably are just fans or autograph hunters. They go there anyway, and then the news eventually comes out.
Yeah, Arteta, like you said, he's wise to that sometimes, isn't it? What game was it when Gabby Jesus was out, and that sort of filtered out around maybe on the morning of the game, and then they did their pre-match walk from the hotel walkabout, and put Gabriel Jesus was out, sort of leading the walk at the front of the walk. So everyone's like, "Oh, he's fit. He is playing." Then lo and behold, you turn up in the game and he's not in the squad at all. It's just a classic Arteta ploy. That was earlier on in the season. I can't remember who it was against.
Yeah, there is a slight trick to figure out what they're doing there, but yeah, I probably won't put that out there.
All right, you want to go? Oh no, it's me actually, isn't it?
I was going to say, yeah, that was me.
It's me, isn't it? Now, this is one on Amari Hutchinson, who is, by all accounts, on the verge of sealing a permanent move to Ipswich. Not been done yet, but negotiations ongoing with Chelsea. Had a few people talking sending in comments about this. With Chelsea on the verge of selling Hutchinson to Ipswich, I was wondering if we have a sell-on clause, and this comes from Arsenal Transfers Analysis. Yes, there is a sell-on clause that I believe is pretty decent, but I don't know what it is. I can't give an absolute number from what it is, but I was told at the time of when the deal was done for Hutchinson, not for too much money. Obviously, I think he only had a year left in his contract, and Chelsea got him for basically nothing. But Arsenal did get a decent chunky sell-on clause included in that deal as a potential sweetener for further down the line. And I think it looks like he's going to go for 22 million at the moment. So you'd think they're certainly going to get a nice little chunk of that heading their way at some point. I don't know if you've heard anything about a sort of actual number when it comes to Amari's sell-on.
No, I mean, I was just told it's not the 50 that people are speculating. I don't think there's ever been in history a deal done at that number. But it's interesting because I think a lot of people seem to think that his contract ran out and he went on a free, similar to how like Mario is at the moment. But as you said, he had a year left. It basically made it known he was off. But we could have held on to him, so it wasn't like a tribunal case or
no, it was
whatever.
an actual deal.
It was an actual transfer.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know. As I said, I was told it was sort of a pretty lumpy sell-on percentage as sell-on percentages go, but not. Yeah. It's not in the realm of the 50. I mean,
yeah, I saw that 50. There's no chance it's 50%. I saw that doing the rounds, but it's
even I think if it's 30, we've done well.
Yeah, even 30 is massive. They got 17.5 for Balogun. And that's a really nice sell-on clause. You don't often get too many of that sort of size. I'm trying to think of the biggest ones I've ever known. What's his name? Zaha United had a big one, didn't he? When they sold him back to Palace, they got a big sell-on clause for him. I think that was about 25% or something like that. It was one of the largest ones I'd heard.
I think United's one as well, if I remember rightly. It was a percentage of the total deal. A lot of clubs now they do percentage of profit. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure the United one the Zaha one, was total percent. So there was a time where someone offered for him, and it was like Palace could have been losing money on him because of how much United were due. Yeah.
That's why it was always when we were looking at him, and there was possible talk of a move, and I think it was they were holding out 70 million, weren't they? Because they wanted to make sure they got a decent chunk of that money because they knew 25% of it was going to have to go to United. But yeah, on Hutchinson, I don't know the figure. All I know is that at the time I remember speaking to someone about it who was trying to sort of make sense of the deal to me, and he was like, "Look, we are protecting ourselves. We've got a nice set-on clause on him if he does move on." And so yeah, I think they'll get a decent little chunk of money for him.
My next question is one that we can just gloss over quickly, but try and put people's minds at rest. Such a lack of movement. Are things actually happening? You look at Chelsea and they're both selling and buying. Why can't we move similar to them, considering we have Champions League money and pool? They are only like none of their deal. We wouldn't want any of the players they get. They're just doing PSR stuff, like paying 19 million for a kid who's played 20 Premier League minutes. Some of the stuff they're doing for the future looks good, but as of now, I think you've got to look at the actual deals that are happening for anyone. There's not a single signing yet that's happened. At least they will when it happens. But you think, oh, that's a quality player going somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I think one, like, never look in your neighbour's pocket or whatever the saying is. But two, if you are looking in their pocket, there's nothing in there to be jealous of.
No. I mean, I've had quite a lot of those as well. I've just brought one of them up, and it's very similar. So when should we start worrying about the lack of concrete action with incomings and outgoings by Arsenal? We're not even me having linked with anyone. Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't be worried yet. We're still at the start of the transfer window. Like you said, all the deals that are happening now are just trying to be rushed through before June 30th. And just look at the clubs who are doing all those deals. It's just the PSR clubs who are trying to do PSR deals. So, yeah, I wouldn't be worried about it at all. It's the Euros. We're in a summer tournament, or a tournament with a summer with two big tournaments going on. It was always going to be a summer where deals happen a little bit later than we've seen in previous summers. So no, I wouldn't be worried about it at all. Although we're not being heavily linked with anyone, then incomings and outgoings are gonna happen 100%. So I wouldn't be worried.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Right, who shall I go with now? Let's go to this one. Let's talk about Eddie, shall we? We've already mentioned Balogun a little bit earlier on when we were talking about sell-on clauses. What are your thoughts if Arsenal should reasonably expect to be able to sell Nketiah for less the same or even more than we sold Balogun for last year? Well, my opinion on this, I'm sure you've seen all the £50 million price tag sort of stories in the last couple of days while you're over there. I think Arsenal should be getting more for Eddie than they got for Balogun. I'd be really, really disappointed if they didn't get more for Eddie. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but look, he's a proven Premier League striker. He scores goals in the Premier League. He's shown that before. He's 25 now. He's not even a kid anymore. Balogun had one decent season in France, and Arsenal got it was just under 30 million with that good sell-on clause. So I think Arsenal should absolutely be getting more for Eddie than they did for Balogun. Do you agree?
Yeah, but I think Balogun had a higher value in the French league because he was not he was proven there in a sense. He'd had one season, he looked really good, and obviously he was young. He had that improvement factor in him. Eddie's obviously played a lot in the Premier League, but he's never sort of set it alight. And you could argue, set it alight might be a bit strong that Balogun had done that. I mean, I will say I've always thought Balogun was useless. When there was the clamour for people, I should be started for us, I just didn't see it. The Aubameyang Brentford game that you spoke about earlier when Balogun started, I think it's one of the worst performances I've ever seen. And it's hard to judge. It was his debut. He was thrown in last minute, but just he looked like he'd never seen a football before that day. So I think Eddie should go for more, but I don't expect it to be too much more, to be honest, just because of that season that Balogun had. And I don't think he would have gone, even though England's obviously traditionally pay more, the English clubs traditionally pay more, I don't think he would have gone for within England at that price. And, well, if anyone would have offered it, they had the chance to offer more and no one did. So I think Balogun was just in a very specific scenario where he'd come off a strong year in a different league.
Yeah. I just look at Eddie, and I know, he's never really set it alight in terms of, he's got 15 goals in the season or anything like that. But I can see him scoring goals for another club when he does make this move. When he does make this move, I can really see him scoring in the Premier League. I just think he's got the attributes to score a fair few goals, and it doesn't surprise me from what I hear that there are quite a few clubs looking at him as well. So. I would expect him to get more. I think 50 million is unrealistic, but 30, 35 million, I think for Eddie is, in my opinion, a fair price. But we shall see if it happens or not.
That's the number I would expect. I think if an offer came in at 35, you'd be very hard pressed to turn it down.
You'd have to accept 35 million. If someone bids 35 million for Eddie, I think you definitely accept that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Bit of a different one, and this is actually a subject that annoys me. So the strength coach, who, to be fair, is in my Patreon just giving everyone PT advice. makes my job well easy. So cheers to that. He said, can you and Charles please clarify what is meant by market opportunity? We keep seeing the term being used by various ITKs, but they never expand on what they mean by it. Does it mean cost of play or availability of a player, cost and availability of a player? First off, I agree with this. I think people throw the term around all the time and I hate it. But yeah, it does mean it's in general, it's something that you hadn't planned on, but you hear of it being an option. And it could be any of those things. Like, so we might not be planning to sign, I don't know, I'm trying to think of someone ludicrous, Bellingham, just to be ridiculous. But we hear that because of Mbappe coming in, they can't afford both their wages and he's available for the same price that they brought him for. And we think he's obviously worth more than that. He's now available. So that is a market opportunity. In general, it's just something you didn't plan for that is brought to your attention. And it ticks all the boxes.
Yeah. Example I'm trying to think of, Kivior. Last January, Arsenal were planning on trying to sign Kivior, but for the summer. And then suddenly in January, got word that he was available then. And they thought, you know what, we're just going to do this. It's going to give us an extra 6 months to bed him in. So we'll get it done now. It was a market opportunity that suddenly emerged. They didn't think he'd be available. Suddenly was made clear to them that he was. And so they pushed forward their plans to sign him by 6 months. When Arsenal signed Mesut Ozil, that all started from Dick Law travelling over to Madrid to speak to them because they got word that Madrid needed to sell because of signing Gareth Bale. They went over there to speak about Benzema or Higuain. They were the two players that they initially went over. And during those meetings, they were told that, was it Ancelotti at the time? I can't remember who was in charge at the time of that. But whoever was in charge, whatever manager, didn't want to lose either of those two players. But Ozil was potentially available, and so the negotiations suddenly flipped. Dick Law phoned Arsenal and said, "Look, we can't sign these two, but they've just said that Mesut might be available. Do you want him?" Arsenal said yes, and so they suddenly turned their attentions to Mesut. It was just a market opportunity that arose because of Madrid needing to sell because of signing Gareth Bale, and talks just suddenly switched to him. So that was a market opportunity. So yeah, there's lots of different explanations, or not explanations. That's the wrong word. There's lots of, what's the word when? It's popped out of my head. But there's lots of different meanings for it. But you can't sort of pigeonhole it in just one particular thing. But it's just when an opportunity arises that perhaps you weren't expecting to arise for whatever reason.
Yeah, and as you said, it can be different ways. So Sesko's would have been that they thought his value was higher than. So obviously the release clause was around 58 million. If they internally valued him at 75 million, they essentially think they're getting 17 million of free value. So it can be many different things. I just think the term's thrown around all the time. Anytime we're loosely linked to someone goes, "Oh, it's a market opportunity." So, is it?
Okay, let's do one more and then we will move on into part 2, which of course, remember you guys, you can get to down below. The link to Team News and Tix's Patreon is down below in the description. You can listen to part 2 of the show there. So last one in this one is from Aaron, who says, Romano is reported at Arsenal keeping an eye out on Italy and Bologna's Calafiori. Is it true that Arsenal scouted and are interested in him? Kind of feels like we scouted him along with Xerxes. But by the sounds of it, this deal or transfer saga has a similar feed to Locatelli a few years ago. So Swallow wanted to sell. Player was looking at Juventus. The deal was completed by Juventus taking a 2-year loan with obligation to buy. Only difference is that Bologna and Juventus are in bad feelings due to Thiago Motta's move. Personally, if we don't sell Kivior and Tierney, there won't be any left side defensive signing. I haven't heard anything on Calafiori. I've seen the reports that Arsenal are one of the teams that are monitoring his performances at the moment over at the Euros. Obviously doing very, very well over there. I saw Romano did tweet it. Someone else tweeted it as well. I can't remember who. But yeah, it's not one that I've heard of. But look, he's a good player. He's doing very well. I'm sure he probably is. It does. Like I think the Locatelli example is a really good one here because Arsenal were interested in Locatelli, definitely 100%. I know that for a fact. But they always knew he was going to go to Juventus. Really, they never actually thought they were going to try and sign him. They were monitoring it in case something with Juventus didn't happen. And it seems like this one as well. You know, Calafiori, by the sounds of it, has his heart set on Juventus. We know Italian players very rarely move. It's a real wrench for them to leave Serie A. They will normally end up at Juventus or a Milan or Inter, someone like that. And I fully expect that to happen again with this case.
Yeah, I never trust anything with Italian players because, as you said, you know where their heart wants to be and they tend to get it. These clubs always feud with each other, and they always end up sorting it out in general. I mean, the profile fits perfectly. So again, I'm similar to you. I've not heard of anything directly from the club or anyone at the club saying we're looking at him, but the profile fits exactly what we want. But yeah, I mean, my money would be on him staying in Italy, and even potentially staying put. But
well, they're in the Champions League, aren't they, Bologna, this season?
Yeah. So I mean, I would put it as a low chance of happening, but I've not had it categorically ruled out. But I've also not heard of anyone say that's what we're looking to do. And also, as the question asker said, like with Zinny, Kirior, and KT still at the club, you'd imagine at least one, probably two, would have to go for that to happen, because I'm kind of not really counting KT as a squad member because he wasn't there last year. But with that injury, I can't see him going in the summer. So
no, I can't see any way Tierney's going to go in the summer now. I mean, if that's as bad as it looked, I know it's, you sort of think 6 weeks for a hamstring, but that looked like a Van de Ven style hamstring injury that Van de Ven got in that Chelsea game at the end of the start of last season. And yeah, I think the chances of Arsenal being able to get any sort of deal done for Kieran Tierney this summer now must be looking very, very slim.
I've actually got a question on it, but which I wasn't going to include because I don't know the answer. But it was, will he need surgery? And it did look like there tends to be minimum 3 months if you need surgery. And the way he went down did look like it could be a surgery one, but I don't actually know the answer.
No, I haven't had it confirmed yet how bad it is. But like you, it looked like one of those, a proper sort of tear away from the bone type thing. And just like Van de Ven, you knew that was a real serious one when he did it, and it felt like it with Tierney as well. Right, we're going to call time then on part one of today's show. Like I said, thank you for watching as always, or for listening. I'll be back tomorrow to do my not tomorrow, sorry. I'll be back on Sunday probably to do my usual show. But we're heading over to Team News and Tips' Patreon now for part 2 of this week's show. So you can get down into the description to find it just there. Thanks for watching. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.